I'm only here to introduce Dr. Abdul Haq Al-Ani, whom we've invited because there was quite a strong demand over the months for more evidence of legal action that we could take. A lot of people wanted to know what we could do rather than simply sit around talking. And Abdul Haq has got a good reputation as a legal activist, and he's put his whole profession on the line to do it. Admittedly, it's mostly for the benefit of the Iraqis, but it incidentally means a benefit to the rest of us, because we're all fighting against the judicial hierarchy, which tries to suppress any kind of what you might call indolence from the people. So I have explained Dr. Abdul Haq's history briefly, and I'll just remind you that he took a objective of trying to stop the bombing of Iraq in the 1990s. I said this amounts to genocide because we're killing people, and we're only supposed to be stopping Saddam Hussein flying. And he said, well, genocide's a bit rich, you can't, a bit too strong. We can't start there. We have a better chance if we just simply said that killing people was illegal and therefore it was a waste of public money, and we'd have much more chance, thank you, if we went to court saying that the bombing of the no-fly zones in Iraq was a waste of public money, which we did. The judge tried to throw it out, saying that you can't judge how much a waste is, the usual sort of complicated thing. Luckily, I had the Ministry of Defence figures showing how much we had spent on this illegal activity, but that didn't seem to bother them. We did appeal against that, but we lost the appeal on the basis that they couldn't interfere with foreign policy or something like that, I think. Anyway, it was Abdul Haq who, as a proper barrister, lent his weight to us as a pro bono advisor to do that. And then I think you heard the story before about how when the war started, we tried to indict Tony Blair. First of all, we tried to stop the war with an interlocutory injunction, which was Abdul Haq's idea. We hadn't heard of that before, but it did seem to be something which the Royal Courts of Justice actually accepted. In fact, they were very helpful. There was only a few days from the beginning from the start of the war, and the civil servant there said, "Oh, I'll help you. I'll come down to the registration office and make sure your case is registered and put through quickly." But as a result of that, he forgot to put a number on the claim form, and the judge said, "You haven't got a number on your claim form," as if that was one reason to throw us out. But luckily he went on, and then he said, "You haven't invited the Treasury solicitor into court," which I had. I'd personally delivered the summons to Treasury chambers a few days before, and they'd obviously thrown it in the bin or tried to escape from it. And they then went on, and Chris Coverdale gave the speech about how what we were about to do was illegal, mainly because Iraq hadn't attacked anybody, and there were several false stories circulating about how he might, as if he could possibly or would want to attack Britain within 45 minutes, and as if the weapons of mass destruction, which we knew had been destroyed by UNSCOM in about 1990, could be brought into action. And of course, subsequently we found that that was a lie too. So that's basically the story of.
James, could you give, for the record, could you give the background, educational background of
Dr.
Yes, I beg your pardon, yes. So Abdul Haq is an Iraqi-born lawyer, but he's registered as a barrister, in the UK, and has been practicing here for 20 years or so, and has, I think, won several cases. But he's been trying to recover some kind of justice for the Iraqi people, who, as you know, have not only lost lives, whole villages and towns, but they've also been subjected to depleted uranium, which is a deadly chemical which we've spread through our weapons. The weapons were tipped with depleted uranium because it hardens the shells and enables them to burn through tank armour. But that's now lying over the desert and over people's farmland, and so people are drinking milk or eating corn that's been grown with that sort of contamination. And as you've probably seen, there have been most horrific deformities from people who have been born since that time. And, you know, this is a crime, a major crime against a country that we as British, well, let's be honest, the British government has been responsible for, particularly Tony Blair and co. And so he's been trying to take them to court and get some compensation. But he can't even get past the Attorney General, who keeps saying, no, you can't go ahead with that case. It's a really terrible indictment of our so-called justice system. I'll let him, though, tell you the rest of the story.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for coming. I'm sure you all are concerned about the crimes that have been committed in your name. I don't consider myself to be British, so I don't say in my name. So otherwise, you wouldn't be here. I just want to let you know that I studied law specifically in order to indict Tony Blair. I make no secret of it. I was a telecommunication engineer, and after 1990, I started studying law in order to be able to. I knew there are very few people willing to take on this task. It's not something. It's not, no, I'm not claiming any glory for it. But the only parallel to what James did was an action by the CND just prior to the invasion, which the court rejected on the grounds that it is a hypothetical idea, as if nobody knew that half 500,000 soldiers in Kuwait were not planning to invade the country. I mean, but that's the judiciary. Anyway, we have, to make a long story short, since 2003 until today, well, until a few months ago, I have tried 7 times to indict Tony Blair, okay? And this was all done pro bono. So I wasn't expecting anything from anybody because all the people I represented are destitute, basically. I mean, they're either victims of DU or victims of war crimes or people or immigrants somewhere, you know, working as a porter in Canada or in Malaysia and so on. So it has been a tough struggle, but I do not expect any money out of it, and I believe that I am fulfilling my mission, which I started in 1990 to try to indict Tony Blair, and I believe that it's sufficient success to be able to indict any criminal, not necessarily to win a case, but it's sufficient to indict, because one indictment is going to be glorious for the British people to say, we had a war criminal, but we brought him to justice. Yeah. And that's what matters. Yeah. Now, I would like to tell you something which is not commonly known among people, and this is very important and very basic to all attempts of trying to initiate criminal proceedings. You see, most people, when they look at international treaties, and especially the criminal ones, they are amazed at how quick the British government rushes into ratifying them, while the Americans wait 40 years to ratify, waited 40 years to ratify the Geneva Conventions, made in 1949 and only ratified, I think, in 1994, 95, something like that. I'm not exactly here. But the British actually ratified it immediately. There's a great secret behind that. Why are the British so enthusiastic about ratifying conventions and treaties while the Americans are not? It's not because the British are more honest in this process. Far from it. The reason is this. In the United States, once the treaty is ratified, it becomes part and parcel of domestic law. So anybody could walk into court and indict anybody under the Geneva Convention now. So between 1949 and 95, the Americans were able to go through the Vietnam War and all the atrocities there without being afraid of any indictment in court. While in Britain, you are not able to indict anybody until Parliament passes a law. So the Geneva Convention made nothing when ratified until Parliament passed the 1957 Geneva Convention Act. Now, this is the same regarding the Terrorism Act, regarding the Terrorism Convention of the European Union that became Terrorism Act 2000. It's the same with the International Criminal Court Act, which was adopted in 2001, very soon after the Treaty of Rome was signed. And this is where the catch comes. In every act that incorporates crime, international crime, into domestic law, there's one section consisting of one single line which renders the act useless, effectiveless. You know what that section says? No action could be initiated under this act without the consent of the Attorney General. Full stop. That means the British government has a veto on any legal action and international law. And that is the obstacle we met from day one. Let me just put another twist to that argument. If, well, in the old days, all crimes were covered by common law. That is a fact. It's only in the 20th century, basically, that all crimes were converted into statute. So now almost all crimes are statute-based. So all these covered by statute law will fall under the requirement of the Attorney General consent. Okay, there are a few crimes which have escaped that fall under the common law. So what happens in these matters? You don't need an Attorney General consent. I'll come back to the Attorney General consent problem in depth, but I'm just giving you the second factor which stops any action being brought, actions under common law. So in order to initiate a criminal proceeding, I don't know how many of you know that, you have to go to the magistrate and request summons to be issued against Mr. X, and so to come to the magistrate and answer to the charge. Now, the magistrate is obliged by law to consider the facts, the law, whether there's any limitation, few factors. Once these are all satisfied, the magistrate is obliged to issue the summons. Now, what happens if the magistrate does not bother to respond, which I have seen three times? The magistrate simply ignores the application for summons. Now, the procedure is to go to the High Court and ask a High Court judge to judicially review the refusal of the magistrate to take action. Now, the magistrate who fails in her duty to issue the summons has to be basically reprimanded by the High Court judge for having failed in the duty entrusted in her on him. But repeatedly, I have appeared before High Court judges, and they went on and on and on. And one of them said, I'm sure the magistrate had good reason not to consider the application. Excuse me, have I heard right? Yes, the judge said it in my face. Okay, and she said, well, even if I were to assume that the magistrate would have considered, I'm sure he would have said this and this. Excuse me, your ladyship, you are not supposed to replace the magistrate. Your job is to decide whether the magistrate acted improperly or did not. You are not a substitute. That's not the job of the High Court. So, now, there another factor of the British legislations come to the rescue of the government or the establishment or whatever you want to call. I call it the Zionist lobby, which dominates the country. Yeah. So, the High Court judge decision in this action, in which there is basically no hearing for the victim. The victim has not been given an opportunity to put his case before the court. The decision of the High Court in this capacity, who is actually acting to prevent a summons being issued, could not be appealed. Listen to this. This is a case of a victim of a crime who isn't given an opportunity to appear in court and have his case heard, is not able to appeal. Now, these two anomalies we have met. The one requiring the Attorney General consent, and the second one in which the judicial review permission is not appealable. On these two accounts, I have lost 7 cases. Now, to be quite honest, anybody who wants to do any action, in my view, should try to repeal the section on the Attorney General consent requirement. And the reason for that is very logical and very sensible. If somebody gets killed in London, I don't need the government consent to go to court. I can go straight to the magistrate and indict the person. So why is it if somebody gets killed in Baghdad, I need the permission of the Prime Minister? Especially if he's killed by a member of Her Majesty's government. Right. And I was Prime Minister, and we did say that to Goldsmith in 2003, as early as 2003. I actually told the High Court judge, my lord, but the Attorney General is a member of the government. I mean, how could he actually be asked to give consent to indict himself? There's a principle, and natural justice in this country dates back to the 12th century. It says that no man should sit in judgment in his own cause. Yes. And this is the Attorney General saying on paper, without even having to give reasons, he just says, no, I'm not satisfied. Well, of course you're not satisfied, because you're on the dock. Now, let me tell you what I think should be done. This year, we had a petition against Tony Blair, was signed by 2 million people, if I'm right. Now, this petition was actually not a parliamentary petition. It was open to international signatories. So what I think we need, and this is a serious action I'm putting to you, which I hope will find ears listening to it. I suggest that a parliamentary petition is made inviting Parliament to repeal the section that requires the consent of the Attorney General as being contrary to justice.
Right.
Now this petition, if signed by 10,000 people, Parliament would have to debate it. I would like to see what those idiots in Parliament are going to talk about it. Most of them haven't got a clue what the law is, and I bet not a single one, maybe a couple of QCs have come across it. But I bet 90% of them never even heard of the requirement of Attorney General consent. No. So I would like to see what they have to say about this petition, because it's a serious matter. We keep talking about this democracy, first democracy in Europe, unique, our integrity of our judicial system. Let me see an MP telling me why is the Attorney General has more authority than a High Court judge. If there's a crime, there is a solid, independent judiciary in this country. You believe in that? Yes, we believe. Then let the judges decide. Let the judges decide if there are grounds for case. Because I'm sure that if Tony Blair were invited tomorrow for the crime of depleted uranium in Iraq, he will be found guilty by any 12 men or women in this country. Because the evidence is so overwhelming that no jury could acquit anybody on it. Right. And I took the case to a High Court judge, and she was all over the place. She didn't know what to say. She didn't know how to argue. She eventually said that Tony Blair is not an employee of Her Majesty's government. I said, what the hell is he? He's a sovereign? He's either the king or he's employed by the king in this country. No member of the government is not a servant of the crown. Everybody is a servant of the crown except the sovereign herself. Because the act was so clear. But as again, I said, there was no way to appeal that. I've got that. I keep carrying her judgment with me just in case anybody wants to read the most ludicrous. This is first year student of law would fail on that, believe me, as an essay. But she got away with it. Why did she get away with it? Because she knew no one is going to appeal it. No higher authority is going to read it and comment on it. So she said whatever she liked. Things she said in the judgment were not even discussed in the hearing because it was two of us alone. She represented everybody. She represented Tony Blair, she represented the magistrate, she represented the government, and I was alone. There was nobody else, no third party. And she had absolutely no authority even to argue the case, because there was no case before her. The only thing that was before her, whether the magistrate was right in not issuing the summons or not. The magistrate didn't even make a judgment in order to make it a debatable question. But nevertheless, she got away with it. And believe it or not, judges are now referring to her judgment as a precedent. Believe me. Okay? So, what I suggest, and there are two crimes which should never ever go unpunished. And the DU has actually, I'm not sure how many of you know the science behind it. The depleted uranium is more hideous than Hiroshima. You know why? Because Hiroshima is one explosion with gamma rays that kills people instantly, and that's the end of the story. The depleted uranium actually emits alpha particles, and alpha particles are so serious they actually carry on emitting radiation for 4 billion years. Not million, not thousand, actually the half-life is 4.3 billion years. So what that means, and this is an issue in which the government in this country and the United States have sat tight on the research behind it. They have all done research on the effect of depleted uranium. In fact, Britain has done it in a site in Scotland where they did the measurement and the effect of radiation, and I think the site is still blocked. No access to the public. This was done in the 90s. So everybody, all the responsible people in this country and the United States know the effect of it. In fact, Iraq is polluted forever. That is the basic fact. And people, the problem with the alpha particles is that they affect the DNA, and they are not visible. The effect is not visible. It's a very, very hideous, slow death. Deformation. Children are born in Iraq with deformities no doctor has ever seen. In fact, I know, I come from a medical family surrounded by 7-8 doctors at the moment, but they tell me, some of these deformities, they've only read about them in books. It's a rare occasion that this kind of a child born with one eye or without digestive system, things so hideous that one doesn't even want to talk about. And I mean, Who's responsible for that? The judge said Tony Blair is not responsible for people using depleted. I said, your lady, but who is? Who sent those kids? Who sent the airplanes carrying the depleted uranium bombs and bullets? If it wasn't Tony Blair, he's the command. So this is one incident which should never be unpunished. And the other one, I believe, the biggest massacre in Fallujah. Every one of you has heard of Fallujah, I'm sure. In 2004, during the occupation, Fallujah was attacked twice in one year. April 2004, yes, 7th of April to be precise, and in October 2004. I personally lost 7 of my 5 relatives in Fallujah in one air raid. I mean, and the Chilcot report has allocated a full section on Fallujah, section 9.3, I think it is. So anybody who's interested to read. And the Chilcot report is a condemnation of the whole invasion. Although Chilcot did not have, his remit was nothing to do with the legality of the action. But you don't need to be a lawyer to read it and say, this is a crime. And in Chilcot's report, there's one mention of an incident. On the second day of the attack on Fallujah. Fallujah is a civilian town. There was no Iraqi army. There was no military. It was attacked from air and land for 7 days non-stop. Okay? The second day of the attack, the Iraqi government appointed by the occupiers. Now we are condemning the Russians for creating governments in the occupied land. But we did that. The Russians are learning from us, actually, aren't they? And they're emulating us. No surprise, if anybody has watched the news, no surprise, Tony Blair has never said a single word about Ukraine, just in case. Everybody's talking about, but he kept quiet because he knows what people are going to say. Because you did exactly what the Russians are doing in Ukraine. Anyway, the second day, a delegation from the Iraqi government went into Fallujah and came out. In one single day, they said there were 823 civilians killed and 2,500 injured in one day. So it gives you an idea how many were killed in the whole campaign of April and October. And then in Chilcot reports that the British commander entered Fallujah and he said, I have no way of expressing my feeling. This is a ghost town. Okay? I mean, isn't that sufficient to be an excuse for asking a question in court?
Yeah.
And we have Jeff Hoon saying in Parliament, we have taken part in helping the Americans in Fallujah. It's public knowledge. He made a statement in Parliament. I mean, these, in my mind, 2 fundamental camps. Forget about the Panorama documentary made last year. I don't know how many of you saw it, but a documentary made by Panorama and the Sunday Times, which showed how the British Army killed civilians in Basra, and specific incidents were documented. And incidentally, do you know how much the British government had paid in damages to people in Basra? No. 195 million pounds. This is hush money to prevent them. Poor people who've got no means, no income, just paid 50,000, 100,000 pounds, and they keep quiet. That tells you the scale of damage they have caused. Why would you otherwise pay 100 million pounds in damages? So there's a big conspiracy. There's a big conspiracy in which, I'm sorry to say, the law as it stands is on the side of the criminal, not on the side of the victim. And if anything we can do in order to be able to initiate a criminal proceeding, I'm not saying necessarily to be able to convict anybody or send anybody to prison, but in order to initiate criminal proceeding, we have to overcome this obstacle of the need of consent, and the only way it can be done, because judges automatically I think, well, I'm sorry, this is the will of Parliament, and we have a democracy, and Parliament knows best. Well, Parliament doesn't know best, because all these acts, tell me one MP who has ever read a criminal act of 200 pages, let alone comment on them. Acts are not written by Parliament. Acts are written by professionals in the Ministry of Justice. Actually, the country is run by the civil servants in the Ministry of Justice. Okay? And Secretary of State comes and goes and changes nothing. All these acts and all these regulations. So in order to be able to do something, first step is to make a petition, parliamentary petition, and encourage people to sign it, to force Parliament to consider it, and we have a debate on the need for consent. I would like to know one lawyer. I would like to know how the Attorney General comes in Parliament and defends the need for his consent or her consent. Sorry.
After all your efforts over the last 20 years,
Yeah.
what becomes clear is that this edifice,
Yes.
this establishment
Yes.
of government, judiciary, every institution is corrupt.
Yes.
The whole edifice is
Yes.
corrupt.
Yeah.
What is driving this is not the Tony Blairs, the Geoffrey Coxes, the Sweller-backed Brennemans. It is money. Money is driving everything, because everybody dances
Yeah.
to the tune of
Sure.
money.
Sure.
And who drives the money? The people who drive the money. So if we want to change things,
Yeah.
that is where we've got to look. And as much as I applaud what you're doing, I fear that you're just banging your head against a brick wall, because these people are more frightened of the people who control them than they are of us.
I
They are
have.
psychopaths too, though, Clive. They, in their own right, are psychopaths.
Yes, but the whole system is
Yeah,
psychopath,
sure.
Yes, but
which
they
is why
are
we
also
cannot,
psychopaths.
we cannot fight the
Q&A
system.
already.
Has
We
it?
cannot reform or improve our condition and everybody else's condition, because until everybody else's condition improves, ours doesn't. We cannot do that with this corrupt institutional edifice that we have. And that is why
See,
this is much more fundamental.
I-
Otherwise, you're just tilting at
I do not differ with you. I do not differ with you. But on the other hand, I believe my mission in life is to struggle in my corner as much as I can. Now I fully agree. I fully agree. I think the whole capitalist system should be uprooted. I believe it's the failure of the whole system.
neither capitalism nor socialism. They're fusing the two. It's
well,
about the money.
Okay, yeah. Well, I use the capitalism in the sense of referring to the money system. I use it in that term. Let's not get too technical about this, but you know what I mean. But I believe it's my role in life, it's my mission in life to fight my battle on the ground which I'm familiar with. The ground I'm familiar with is what I chose to fight in law. I know I'm knocking my head against the wall. Do you think I have been 20 years not aware of what I'm doing? Of course I am. But I'm not going to stop, because that is the only way. That's the only way I can do things. I mean, I'm not young enough to carry a gun and fight, because I would have gone and fought with people who are fighting for liberation in Palestine, to be quite honest. Yeah. Okay? But I can't do that. So my battle is in what I can do, and that's in the legal field. And that is why I would like to try to test the grounds of whether there's enough common sense. Because at the end of the day, the system is too complicated to appreciate such a small niche in change, calling for change of one section. I believe me, 90% of those you're talking about, Benny, haven't got a clue what the law is all about, or what a section in the law is going to do. I know they'll have enough advisors to tell them, but I would like to test the possibility of getting enough people to see the common sense and asking the question, now, why do I need the permission of the government to start a judicial action? This is the basic question, because the Attorney General consent is the permission of the government. But why do I need it? If you have a solid, efficient judicial system, let the case go to the court. Now, all I need is to get to the court and call Tony Blair to answer. Then we have the 12 men and women in jury deciding, but that happens after exposing the whole crime to the public, because that is a public hearing. We can call on any witness, we can call on any expert, let him do what he can do. But after that, I don't really care whether I win or lose the case. All that matters is that I have exposed the system, okay? And that is a victory.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Can I ask you one question?
Yes, please, go ahead.
You know anything about I think the man's name was Guido Belli in 2015,
Yes,
where he was taken to the High Court under a terrorism charge.
yes.
And the case was dropped because MI5
Yes.
and the SAS
Yes.
were involved. Can
Yes.
you talk a bit about
Well, I don't know the full details. That was dropped because the judge ordered the disclosure of some documents, and the documents were not disclosed because in it they would have discovered that he was an agent of MI5.
Sure.
Yeah, you see, he was actually planned. And then they ditched him and they wanted to convict him. And his lawyers were clever enough to ask for the documents. And the judge, here again, a judge had a slight common sense to say, look, let's see what's in behind it. And although these documents were not going to be disclosed in public, but they will be disclosed to the judge and the defense counsel. And that was enough for the MI5, the security, to drop the case. Yeah, that I think is accepted as had happened. Yeah.
Right. My question was about international courts of criminal justice. Have you considered whether you would speak to them at all?
So who?
The international courts of criminal justice.
Oh, that's the biggest joke in history,
Is it?
my dear. Absolutely. Let me show you. Let me show you. Let me show you. No, that's a farce. I'm sorry.
I mean, did they find that the Queen Elizabeth was actually guilty of the torture and the, let's say, bad treatment of native Canadian Indians?
No, they didn't.
International tribunal.
That's got nothing to do with the ICC. The ICC. Here.
Okay.
You can read this.
I will,
You
but-
can read this loudly.
I have another.
Can you all speak up, please, when you're asking from the floor, so we can hear it for the camera, you see?
Right.
Yeah. Now, the ICC.
Come up here and talk.
The ICC. The ICC was created again, in order to try people in Africa who've got nobody to back them or defend them. So far, the ICC has only indicted Africans, I'm sorry to say. But, I mean, are they...
And what's it?
No, he wasn't. No, he wasn't. He had a special tribunal. Although the Yugoslavia and Rwanda were special tribunals created by the United States and controlled directly by the United States. The ICC was created by other nations, especially Europeans, and opposed by the United States. In fact, the United States has passed a law which criminalizes anybody who cooperates with the ICC. Believe it or not. This is unique in history, but nobody talks about that. I mean, the British government is not up in arms saying to the Americans, how come, I mean, you criminalize people who are cooperating with an international tribunal. The Americans got away with it. Anyway, but no, the ICC is a big joke. The ICC is a tool of European imperialism. You bring a Muslim from your clique, put him as a prosecutor on the ICC, and they say, what can we do? This is an independent QC, a Muslim, and he doesn't want to indict us, you know?
So it's all about window dressing?
Sorry?
All about window dressing?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Of course it is.
Two brief questions, if I may.
Yes?
Hang on, we're just going to have the answer to the previous one.
At the end of this story here, if you're going to read something.
Yes.
Let's hear this first.
This is in response to our application to the ICC on depleted uranium case. After we finished the litigation here, which was not much of a litigation, after our action was thrown out, we applied to the ICC in accordance with the Statute of Rome. When the domestic courts are procedures are exhausted, you go to the ICC. So we applied to Mr. Karim Khan. Listen to it. They sent me a press release, actually, in answer to a legal matter, believe it or not.
The letter that I'm reading has come from The Hague, the International Criminal Court, and dated the 12th of May,
Yeah, all right.
2022. Can you all hear me?
A bit louder, please.
Okay.
The microphone isn't working.
That's fine.
Probably not.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
The letter I'm reading out is dated the 12th of May 2022 from Hague, the International Criminal Court. Dear Sir, on behalf of the prosecutor, I thank you for your communication received on the 28th of September 2021, as well as my subsequent related information. As you may know, the International Criminal Court is governed by the Rome Statute, which entrusts the court with a very specific and carefully defined jurisdiction and mandate. A fundamental feature of the Rome Statute is that the court may only exercise jurisdiction over persons for the most serious crimes of concern to the international community as a whole, namely genocide, crimes against humanity and war crimes. These crimes are carefully defined in the Rome Statute, Articles 6 to 8, and further elaborated in the elements of crimes adopted by the Assembly of States Parties. Based on the information currently available, the conduct described in your communication does not appear to fall within these stringent definitions. Accordingly, as the allegations appear to fall outside the jurisdiction of the court, the prosecutor has confirmed that there is not a basis at this time to proceed with further analysis. The information you have submitted will be maintained in our archives, and the decision not to proceed may be reconsidered if new facts or evidence provide a reasonable basis to believe that a crime within the jurisdiction of the court has been committed. I hope you will appreciate that with the defined jurisdiction of the court, many serious allegations will be beyond the reach of the institution to address. I note in this regard that the ICC is designed to complement, not to replace, national jurisdictions. Thus, if you wish to pursue this matter further, you may consider raising it with appropriate national or international authorities. I am grateful for your interest in the ICC. If you'd like to learn more, blah blah blah.
Thank you very much. This is a press release. This is not a legal response to 300 pages of evidence. Now, the person who wrote this has not looked at the documents. He was told to send a letter of refusal. And the last paragraph tells it all. It says, go and seek domestic remedies. Well, I only came to you after I exhausted the domestic remedies. If you had read the file, you wouldn't have come. This is my idea, is what the ICC is all about. So just in case somebody tells you next time ICC, remember this letter.
You're saying that 2 million people, including myself, and I'm a former British soldier,
Yeah.
we came on the street to avert the war. And I agree with my friend over there, but we can honestly say that Tony Blair exacerbated this war. He was the chief war criminal. I was on duty that night in 2001, and I remember a doctor saying to me, this will really be Tony Blair's downfall. And it really, really was. But we shouldn't forget that 2.5 million people, I think, came out on the street in this country against that war. So I mean, when you're a soldier, you have no say at all in where you're going to be posted. You're under military law and you're under civil law as well. That's the trouble. One substantial question on something, if I may. We're all told that the catalyst of the Iraq war was the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait. Now, I've seen some appalling photographs of a retreating Iraqi convoy literally burnt to cinders, burnt alive. Am I right in saying that the Saddam Hussein, being known as the Ba'athist Party, a socialist party, it's what the United States always want to do, and that is to destroy any aspects of socialism? This was their true motive?
No.
No.
I'll tell you what the motive of the United States in the Middle East has always been: to make Israel superior indefinitely. It's got nothing to do with socialism. It's got nothing. Iraq is not a socialist state. Not a single country in the Arab world is a socialist state. So to talk about USA defeating socialism is fiction. The only objective of the United States since 1960, every single president who came to the White House declared from day one that his superior objective is to make Israel superior in the Middle East. The defense of Israel is number one to every person, and it's not a secret. They talk about it day in, day out. The first day Biden came to power, he said, "I'm a Catholic, but I'm a Zionist."
Could I add something to that?
So it's not really about socialism. So.
Let's not forget, over 700 British soldiers, including one of my uncles, died fighting for Palestine when it was a protectorate, and that's including, I think, the Palestinian policing as well. They did some appalling things to the British soldiers, so I think, and there were riots here when Sergeant Mason Payne, I think there were riots in this country about their sheer brutality.
Yes.
I don't think the British people on the whole are warmongering people, although we're descended from Anglo-Saxon countries, I know that. But I don't think we're really a warmongering people today.
No, quite. But can I just finish this before you ask your question, Frank?
Speak up, James.
The reason why America was on the side of the Israelis is because the Israeli lobby is extremely powerful in America.
Sure.
That's probably well known.
Sure.
But they're
More
particularly,
money, actually, as Clive was talking about.
particularly wanted to attack Iraq because Iraq was one of the countries that signed an agreement to try and recover the Holy Land from what they call the infidels. And isn't it right that they formed the Ba'ath Party, or maybe it was already formed, in order to bring the other Arab states like Syria and Egypt into a coalition to force basically the Zionists out of the Holy Land. That's why the Israeli lobby went to American congressmen and said, "You've got to defend us from this evil threat that we're under. We need arms. You've got to destroy their capabilities." And that's why Saddam Hussein was given the green light to go into Kuwait. Do you remember? That was a ploy as an excuse to destroy some of his army, which they did. As they retreated through the road to Basra, they bombed and shelled the retreating troops, destroying the army, whether they were a threat or not. So it's that bit of the story I think most people don't know about. Is that right?
I mean, there were terrible photographs. I mean, I've never seen anything quite like that. They were burnt alive in the lorries.
Yeah.
It was just hideous. I've never seen anything quite like that.
The Iraqis call it the road of death, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Could I just ask Pat
Yes.
whether he's finished what he wanted to say? We're starting to veer off into a lot of
It's
things.
okay.
Well, before we do that, just one more question from Frank. He has had his hand up.
It's more an observation,
Yeah.
because you mentioned the sanctions
Yes.
which are imposed on Iraq. Madeleine Albright,
Yeah.
who was Secretary of State, when they pointed out to her that nearly 500,000 of Iraqi children died because of the sanctions, she said it was a price worth paying.
Yeah.
She was a monster. She was no human. She was a monster. She should have been tried and hanged as a war criminal, destroying half a million children. And, what kind of government, what kind of nation could do such a thing? Monsters. No human, a monster.
And overlook it.
Yeah. Go on. Sorry, go on.
I just wondered whether you had finished what you wanted to say about the overall.
Well, there's a lot to say, but go ahead, please. I mean, yeah.
No, he's just
I wanted you to
inviting you
finish
to
off.
continue.
Okay. Well, I think, look, maybe, I mean, I'm personally involved, of course, and maybe sometimes it sounds like an emotional speech more than legal. But of course, I was born in Iraq, I grew up in Iraq, I was educated there, and I know Iraq as when I grew up in it, it was a beautiful, prosperous, growing country. Now Iraq is a wasted country, wasted land, basically. There's no government, and this is all a result of the invasion and occupation.
Who do you fundamentally blame for that? Because you mentioned the Zionist entity or the Zionist occupation. Is that where the primary blame, I don't want to put words into your mouth,
No.
is that
Yeah,
correct? So
yeah,
you
absolutely.
agree with myself?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
The Zionist movement, which controls, as I believe in it, although we may differ on the technicality, is the highest stage of capitalism today. It controls the market, the money, and it controls politics of the United States and Europe. And
Yes, who controls Israel?
I have no idea. I don't know.
The banking families.
I don't know. I only know.
Given it.
Yeah, I only know.
17.
I know the phenomenon. I can't pinpoint who is behind what, but I can see the effect.
It's a private. Israel is a private enterprise.
Okay, if you put it like that, okay. But to me, the objective of United States and Europe in the Middle East has been to serve Israel. That is the basic objective. There's no other objective. And I, as a victim of that, have to stand up and say it openly. I'm not afraid of saying it. I'm not ashamed of saying it, because that's the reality. The force that destroyed my country is Zionism. Nothing else. There was not a single. I'll give you an example of what everybody talks about 9/11. Okay, the Americans occupied Afghanistan and Iraq because of 9/11. Not a single Iraqi has ever attacked the United Kingdom or United States. So why was Iraq invaded? Okay, not a single event has been initiated by the Iraqi regime against the United States or United Kingdom.
Every war
Yeah.
has been started through lies and
Yeah.
propaganda and false flags.
Yeah,
and they're all benefiting the same people.
Yeah, okay.
So what you're talking about goes back 2,500 years to 458 BC, when this cult of destruction actually started colonizing. And this is not Jews. This is a cult that has actually woven Jews around them as their security.
I'm sorry. Let me be very clear. I do not mean Jews by Zionism.
Yeah,
No, because very simply, Tony Blair is more Zionist than any rabbi in Palestine. I'm sorry, and Joe Biden says himself, and I'm not caught putting words in his mouth. He said, "I'm a Catholic, but I'm a Zionist." Well, he's not a Jew, obviously. Far from it. The Catholics I knew were very much anti-Jewish. But so no, I'm sorry. I grew up in Baghdad in a Jewish district. My closest friends in high school were Jews. Okay, Eliezer, my closest friend, I will never forget him. In Baghdad, there was a complete mix. We didn't have ghettos. Not like Europe, where the Jews have ghettos, like a ghetto in Warsaw, a ghetto in Belgrade. No, there were no ghettos. The Jews lived in the most prosperous areas in Baghdad, and I happen to have been lucky to be born in a prosperous family and lived among them. So we've never had any problem. And the Zionist movement is a political movement. It's not about religion. It's not about, there are Muslims who are as Zionists. Salman Abdul Aziz, Mohammed bin Salman is more Zionist than many Jews in the world. Okay?
Yes, you don't have to be Jewish to be Jew-ish as well,
No.
as a matter of fact.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
That's Blair, Bush, and etc. The Pope.
Have you started the petition? Did you say you've started the petition?
No, I'm proposing it. I'm not. I actually think starting a petition in the name of Abdul would not go very far.
Right.
So, quite honest. And I'm not. No, this is not a joke. This is serious. I've lived. Look. If I tell you something, you probably find it very strange. I was called to the bar in 1996. Okay, and when I finished, I have. It's usually the process to apply to chambers to work in a set of chambers. Barristers rarely work on their own because they don't get work. They get work through a set of chambers. And I applied to 21 set of chambers. I still have the correspondences with them. And they all refused me. One of them was so honest to say you've got all the qualifications, or in fact, you've got more qualifications than we require, but you simply don't fit. Okay? You can draw your own conclusion from that statement. So,
Have you approached any organisations to take up the petition? Have they responded positively?
no, I have not. This is the first time I raised the petition question. On the invitation of my friend James, I thought I will raise it here. No, I have not.
It'd be interesting to see how they'd react.
I think this is a mass action done by individuals and put on the Parliament website. It doesn't need an organisation, because you are entitled to do it automatically. Once you initiate it, 6 months, if within 6 months it raises 10,000 signatures, Parliament is obliged to consider it. And I don't think it needs anything beyond that. You see, in 1945, when the Germans were defeated, the Allies set up the Nuremberg Tribunal to try the German criminals. They set up something similar in Japan. But in order to grant permission for the British judiciary and the army to try the Germans, the king issued a royal warrant. It's called Warrant Number 1, 1945. And in that warrant, the king authorized anybody under his jurisdiction to be tried for crimes of war, including the crime of aggression. Now, the 1945, the tribunal itself concluded that the crime of aggression is the most heinous of crimes because it incorporates all other crimes, including war crimes, crimes against humanity, basically saying that if it was not for aggression, there would be no war crimes, which is sensible. And so, yes, indeed. Now, what happened in 2003, and this is where the judiciary becomes very tricky in the UK. There was a group of people, one of them was our friend, went to an airport, I think it was near Liverpool, not near Bristol, and they attacked, sorry?
I think it was Glasgow.
No, Bristol. No.
Sorry.
They attacked American aircraft on the runway, and they were arrested and taken to court. And they argued that they were actually acting to try to prevent a crime.
Gun.
Yeah. And so the case, the magistrate was very sensible. He said, that's beyond me. I'm not going to make judgment on it. Let's ask a higher authority. Okay? What's the position of the law on, is it justifiable defense that you are preventing a crime? Actually, there is a section in, I think, 1967 Criminal Act, Section 3 says that anybody has a full defense if the action is going to prevent a crime. So they relied on it. And the case went to the House of Lords. There was no Supreme Court yet. That's 2006. And one of the most senior and brightest judges, I must say, Lord Bingham, made a judgment that has sealed the whole argument. He said this: Parliament had not legislated that aggression is a crime. And that was the end of the matter. And since then, we have tried twice to overcome that, and twice we were rejected because of the judgment of Lord Bingham that aggression, indeed, aggression is the crime.
That's a contradiction. That's a total contradiction, because that makes a mockery of law. Because of course, aggression is a crime. That's what criminal law is.
Well, you should read John's 2006 House of Lords and read what Bingham said. We spent half a day arguing in court before the Lord Chief Justice. I didn't. It was Mike Mansfield who made the argument, and he failed. The Lord Justice said that we are bound by the House of Lords judgment. You see, if the House of Lords made a judgment, everybody is bound by it, whether it's right or wrong. There's nobody's going to argue, unless the Supreme Court today rules that there was a mistake in that, and nobody below that can do it. You are right, it makes no sense. In fact, the question is, If it was okay to try the Germans for aggression, why is it not okay to try the British for aggression? I'm sorry, but if it's a crime, it's a crime.
You mentioned Nuremberg.
Yes,
That was a Soviet-style show trial.
yes,
By the victors.
yes.
What we're talking about, the reason that all of these things won't apply is because it's always the victors who dictate the rules. And Iraq was not the victor in this.
Yeah, of course.
The same way that Libya was not
Yeah,
the victor in
yeah,
this.
sure.
So, you know,
Yeah.
this relying on the Nuremberg.
No, I wasn't relying on
Yeah, I know, but-
I wasn't relying on the Nuremberg. I am saying that actually, where Bingham was wrong is because the aggression was crime since 1945. The king said so. I didn't say it. You see, the problem is that when Bingham said it's not law under aggression is not a crime under UK law, he was wrong because the king made it a law in 1945. So it's not creating a new crime so that we need Parliament to legislate. It was a crime since 45. I'm not trying to discuss the morality. No, I'm not trying to discuss the morality of anything. I'm only talking about the jurisdiction under UK law. I'm only saying that under UK law, aggression is a crime. It is a crime since Second World War at least. Okay? And more importantly, the principle that has been upheld for the last 200 years is that any principle under customary international law is incorporated into UK law. And the aggression is a crime under customary international law. This has been accepted universally.
What's your opinion on the legality or illegality of the bombing of Belgrade and Serbia in the...
That's a war crime indeed.
Thank you.
Yes, of course it is. Any attack on any country now is defined in the ICC statute. They have incorporated the 1974 definition of aggression into the Statute of Rome. Britain has refused to ratify the fourth element in the ICC so far. They have accepted genocide, war crimes, and crimes against humanity, but have refused to ratify the one on aggression because they are planning further aggression, my friend. That is the only reason.
Yes, this is a pattern, isn't it? Can you clarify what your specific opinion is on, I think it's Resolution 1441, which was justifying action with the bombing of Iraq and aggressive action?
No. Look, I wrote a full book on. I'm sorry, I'm not going to answer you a question which I spent 2 years writing a full book on it.
If you can't condense it, don't worry.
No, seriously, no, I can't address it. It's a very.
Do you agree with Goldsmith's advice that he gave to the government? If I put it that way.
No. First and foremost, Goldsmith didn't write that advice. It was written by a professor at LSE who has since lost his position in the International Crime of Justice in International Court of Justice. Yes, he served one term and they kicked him out. Anyway, Goldsmith should never write an opinion on a criminal matter when he is a commercial lawyer. He deals with banks. As far as he's concerned, he's good with money.
So
but
it's unqualified?
Totally unqualified.
Experience.
Totally unqualified. He has no idea. He's never ever in his life dealt with one criminal case. And he was made Attorney General because of affiliations in the... Yeah, but when the time came, he wrote actually an opinion of 6 pages in which he said, if we go to war, we could end up in front of the ICC. And that was the opinion which was proper legal opinion which the ministers saw. And that's why I said it's all in my book documented. But the chief of staff told Tony Blair 3 days before the invasion that my soldiers are not going to fight unless there is a legal opinion telling them it's legal, because no one of them wants to end up in court. We don't know what's going to happen in 5 years' time. You're gone. So Tony Blair summoned Goldsmith and told him, we need this opinion. Goldsmith didn't have, actually what you call as an opinion is 1 page answer to a question in the House of Lords. It wasn't even an opinion.
Do you
But
believe he was told effectively?
Yes.
Implied whatever
yes,
advice he was
yes,
given?
just like the 2002 dossier of Tony Blair, which he kept sending to to correct it, adjust that. If you,
WMD.
yes, if you have a dossier comes from the intelligence service, you accept it as it is. You don't send it back. What do you send it back for? For what? To be corrected? Corrected according to what?
So your opinion is that was fabricated or inaccurate as well?
What one?
That dossier.
Yeah, that's what Shilkot says.
Yeah.
But Shilkot tells you that was all fabricated. So I'm not saying it. I'm telling you this is the United Kingdom government official document.
I'm not necessarily disputing what you said.
Look, our cases since 2016, before the High Court, has been mainly based on Shilkot conclusions. Our facts are not speculations or news or items. They are all documents from Shilkot. Every argument made was based on a fact established by secret documents, secret memos, and so on, all in Shilkot. Not necessarily the full text of the memo is exposed, but Shilkot gives you the summary of it or what it entails. Yes. Shilkot concluded that the 2002 was doctored, basically. Yeah.
Chris, you had a question.
Chris, sorry.
I just wanted to suggest a couple of ways forward from
Yes,
here.
please
that
do.
are slightly different from the petition.
Yeah.
In terms of the law, Section 78 of the International Criminal Court Act is quite clear that this act applies to the Crown and to servants of the Crown, which includes the Attorney General.
Yes.
And I'm wondering whether you have, or anybody else, has actually used
Yeah.
Section 78
Yeah.
to argue
Yeah.
for why we need to hold the Attorney General to account
Yes.
and the Prime Minister to account in court.
Yes, we have. Yes, we have. And the judge didn't even want to listen. Because knowing,
Did he give any reason?
no, he doesn't. This is the point I've just said. At the permission stage of judicial review, you are alone with the judge. He doesn't need to tell you anything. He listens to you. If he wants to comment, he comments. Then he says, I'll reserve judgment. You go home. Then 2 days later, he sends you the most bizarre judgment, which you cannot dispute anywhere because you cannot appeal. Yes, we have raised that. Of course, one of the fundamental arguments, I actually initiated a criminal proceeding in 2003 against Goldsmith personally, accusing him of breaching fundamental principles of justice by sitting in judgment in his own cause and inviting him.
I remember that.
Yeah, you remember that?
Yeah.
And so we didn't get anywhere with the High Court because we get the same laughable judgment of the judge dismissing, or says one of the judges actually wrote in his judgment, which wasn't actually an action initiated by me, it was initiated by a charity. But listen to this. One of the most senior administrative court judges wrote, he said, when does Abdul Haq realize that he has no hope of winning any of these cases? In the judgment.
This is the problem we have. The second point I wanted to do is the International Criminal Court
Yes.
Scotland Act
Yes.
is different law.
Absolutely.
It may be possible
Yes.
to take a case against...
Thank you, Chris. You think I haven't done that?
No, I'm not saying it.
I have.
I'd like to find out.
I have. I actually thought that because the International Criminal Court Scotland is different to that of England and Wales, I'm going to rely on it. And I did write to the Attorney General, to Advocate General, I call him, it doesn't matter. And he said, no, I'm not interested. And then I tried even to do what is never done, to attempt a private prosecution. I was laughed at because there's no such thing as a private prosecution in this matter in Scotland. So I was dismissed. Yes, we tried even that. We tried.
Finally, the International Criminal Court Elements of Crimes Regulation
Yes.
on genocide. There are 4 very clear laid out elements of the crime of genocide. Have you tried proving those in court?
I have. I have tried it with the ICC itself, but you just heard the answer I got from them.
On the elements of crime regulation?
Yes. I applied full application to the ICC, filing our attempt at the domestic level, which had been rejected by Mrs. Justice Cutts, and then invited them to apply their jurisdiction under their own, and they sent me this letter, which we just read to you 10 minutes ago. It's a mockery case. It's a mockery. No one is serious. I mean, these organizations deal with you because there's nothing you can do. If the ICC says it's no good, there's nothing you can do. There's no appeal. Yes.
I have a question which is a bit creative, I think.
Louder, please.
I think if we can't try or even get our case heard,
Yeah.
you could consider looking at arms manufacturers who sell dangerous, stroke poisonous weapons and actually bring them to task and their shareholders. If you can't get the people who actually made the order, you can at least get the people that supplied things that they knew because they were built according to specifications of the impact it would have, not just this year or next year, but as you said, for like 4 billion years.
Yes, but this is not so straightforward to do because you are always met with the most fundamental question a judge will ask you: what is your locus standi?
Yes.
You see, this is.
Do no harm.
Well, that's right. But do you have a right? This is the Attorney General right
Yes,
only.
I do, because our relatives
Well,
are in Iraq.
I think, it's admirable approach, but I don't think it will take you. We have tried the most obvious thing to bring a victim who said, look, I'm a victim of DU. I have cancer, which doctors tell me most likely done from DU. We didn't even get a hearing. You see, I mean, if you come and say, I represent public interest, the judge will say, well, no, you don't represent public interest.
Okay. My response to that would be, how many jurors would be unwilling to go to Iraq to actually...
Now, this is good talk between you and me, but there's no position for this argument in law. You can't argue that in law. I mean, we're talking about procedures where you go file your argument to that court, the judge reads it, and you don't in court you said, well, it's not a question to be asked in court.
Well, the question then is, where is justice?
There is no justice.
Exactly. So what are we going to do about it?
Well, I think what we're going to do is, as Hack outlined, what he needs is for all of us and several tens of thousands of other people to write a petition to the Parliament.
No, let me just say something. If 2 million people believe that Tony Blair should not be knighted, then surely some 10,000 of them should agree that he should be tried. That's all we're saying.
Yeah.
I want to see, there's an important question here to me, and I'll be honest and tell you about it. Out of those 2 million people, how many people do not want Tony Blair to be knighted because he killed Iraqis, and how many want to see him not knighted because he killed British soldiers?
Right.
That I would like to know.
Yeah, good
Can I
point.
just say on that point, I mean, I think over 400 British soldiers died alone in Afghanistan.
Yes.
But despite all your frustration, I can understand your frustration, we're all frustrated, I've got friends in the British Army out there. You have won the moral victory, and I'll tell you the reason why. Tony Blair, Tony Blair is known as a war criminal, even when he was going to try and sign his autobiography.
Yes.
The British Army didn't go there, they had to cancel it.
Yeah.
There's been songs written about
Yeah,
it,
I'm sure.
Liar. There's even been a play wrote around called The Trial of Tony Blair.
Oh,
So,
there's
there
a
was.
film about it.
Yeah, and
There was one here.
it's there, it's under
Yes.
the establishment which is
Yeah,
protecting this war criminal. And whatever you might think, he is a haunted man.
He is.
You've
Yes.
only got to look at it. Oh, yes, well, you don't understand antisocial personality, it's called psychopathy. you never understand it, but he is a haunted man.
Yeah, he is. He is.
Close to his dying day.
And I want to come back to another thing that Hack said, which was what's stopping him going to the courts is the Attorney General, and we need Parliament to
That's it.
reform the law,
Yeah.
so that the Attorney General cannot stop actions which indict members of the government.
In 1 month, we'll be able to indict Tony Blair. Once Parliament removes that, because no magistrate will be able to go and get a consent. Tony Blair increased his majority after invading Iraq in the second election. I've been following these very carefully. Some of his ministers who voted for the invasion of Iraq are still in parliament, and some of them are back in Keir Starmer's shadow cabinet. They will be ministers in 2 years' time. These are all criminals. I'm not going to, say the whole thing is Tony Blair alone. Parliament voted for the invasion of Iraq. Parliament is guilty. Parliament is us. Parliament represents us. If you look at the number of MPs who voted for the invasion of Iraq, then it's only 45 MPs who voted against invasion of Iraq, including the failure of Jeremy Corbyn. Unfortunately, I have to say that. But the rest all voted for the invasion. So why are we saying we are not party to it? We are all party to it. We have elected those people. We are responsible for them. They voted for the destruction of another country. Iraq, Afghanistan.
But if you're spoiling your ballot and you've been consistently since childhood opposed to this cabal that's in the establishment, you can't blame someone like yourself. You can blame the others, but you can't blame someone like that.
Yes, but unfortunately, that's our democracy.
That is democracy.
Which is a lie.
Yeah.
That we get blamed for our government because we are not got an alternative. All our parties are pro-Zionist.
Yes.
So we don't have democracy because we don't have a choice.
Right.
But these people who have been bombed and pillaged and plundered, they think that we are responsible because we have a democracy. That's the bloody great
It's a
tragedy
setup.
of the whole thing.
Yes,
No,
it's a setup.
and-
We're bringing democracy to the Middle East. For God's sake, we don't have it ourselves. We don't have choice.
Another way of looking at it, those people, the helpless people in Iraq, say we were punished for the alleged crime of Saddam Hussein. So why shouldn't we punish the British for the crime of Tony Blair? Same argument. See? Now, I would like to. May I just make?
Controllers are intentionally
Yeah.
creating that situation.
May I-
They're manipulating
I fully appreciate the political argument, but let me ask you a humanitarian argument. Let me ask, how many airplanes or trucks of food have been bused from Europe to Iraq during the 13 years of starvation? Tell me, show me one. Show me one. I'm sorry, this applies to all the people. It's got nothing to do with government.
I agree with you. The majority of people are not bothered. Maybe there were 2 million, but the majority of people are not bothered, and that's not correct. I would agree with you. But that goes for other issues like organised child abuse.
I was talking.
They're not bothered, and that goes for other countries as
I was
well.
talking to a lady.
The population is not bothered in those countries either. And then the Zionist controllers manipulate this, and then they send
Where's
nations
Chris going?
against nation.
Can I just ask, what made, I should know the answer to this, what made George Bush immune to prosecution? What was it that what would he have to give him immunity?
I'll tell you what. He's immune theoretically from the ICC because the United States has not ratified the ICC statute, and any state that has not ratified does not apply. And the second thing, there is an act of Congress which protects all American officials from any prosecution, and that has put a seal on any action. There's no such act in the UK, but they do it in a clever way, the British way. Have a section in an act and say we have an act, but we can't prevent that act functioning. Well, nobody notices. I mean, we're great. We've got the Geneva Convention Act, the ICC Act, the Terrorism Act, but they don't function until the government says they should function.
Thank you. If there's any consolation,
Yes.
this edifice is already crumbling because everything's driven by money. What we're seeing at the moment is the collapse of sterling. The dollar will follow. The whole edifice is beginning to fall apart. Out there, and it may not seem it, if you watch mainstream media, you won't see it. But beneath the radar, there are people locally waking up, doing things, and actually withdrawing consent from the system. So this is going to come down. It may not ever give you the justice you want, but it will create justice for the future, which is probably more important than justice for the past.
I don't want my action simply to be retribution. No, I don't. I think one of the main main purpose of any legal action is to be a deterrent. And if any action today regarding Iraq becomes a deterrent on future aggressions, then fine, that is satisfaction, that is justice. I accept that, yes, indeed, yes.
There was one exception, and that was the 8 British mercenaries, they prefer to be called professional soldiers, that were on trial for war crimes in Angola.
Yes.
I think in 1970. What happened to them? Were they executed or what?
No, I don't think so. No, I don't think.
76,
I don't think so. No, who would execute so many British soldiers? No, it's unheard of and unacceptable. Not in this atmosphere anyway. Yeah.
One of the unfortunate consequences of your point is that the establishment knows that things are coming to an end, and they're going to work jolly hard to make sure that we don't upset the apple cart by interfering with our communications, by blocking and making illegal
They've
images.
already lost.
Is it?
They've already lost.
And I think this petition, which I hope will materialize, and I don't see why it shouldn't, because I could actually start it on my own. But as I said, I don't want the first name on the petition to be Abdul Haq. Puts many people off. Seriously, no. For the reasons, look, I've lived 45 years in this country, and in every aspect of my life, I have faced discrimination. I'm not bitter about it, and I don't blame any British friend regarding that, because I'm sure it is an individual, and racism exists in every country. I mean, incidentally, let me tell you what happened. This is a clarification of happened. In 2003, my friend James Hare and a couple of Chris workers set up an organization called Legal Action Against War Law. I think you've heard about it. Okay, they tried to look at the possibilities of bringing action. One of the members, he passed away, Sir Bradshaw, hasn't he?
Yes.
Yes. One of them phoned the Metropolitan Police. This is interesting to see how things work in this country, and talked to a member of the Metropolitan Police about carrying out an investigation of crimes committed in Iraq. And the sergeant in the Met clearly believed that there is such a thing as the rule of law. Poor guy. He really believed. But he was a sergeant, but he still believed in it. So he went ahead and phoned the Attorney General and tried to ask them about how to go about, would they give their consent to do so. I'm sure they laughed at him. But they didn't tell him that what we talk about should not be passed to the other party. Genuinely, the guy thought it was democracy and the rule of law. So he wrote this letter to my friend. This is a very serious document. He said, I am writing to confirm to you that the Attorney General's office has declined to grant consent for criminal proceedings against members of Her Majesty's government. This decision was made after consultation with the Crown Prosecution Service. Of course, the Attorney General never intended him to pass this information. What this letter says is that the Attorney General office did not ask the sergeant which case, where's the evidence, how are you going to analyze it. They simply said a blanket no. Yeah. You see, they had no details. This tells you what is behind the clause of the Attorney General consent. I have taken this to every High Court judge I came across, and they brushed it aside. One of them said, oh, I don't know who wrote this letter. I said, doesn't matter, my lady. This is signed by a sergeant. And he couldn't have fabricated the matter. He must have got it from the Attorney General.
Have you put these on the website anyway?
I should do.
What for?
Because, we feed off this information. The way this community and many groups operate is by sharing information like that. That's the first time I've ever heard.
Yeah, of course. I'm doing something bigger than that, much more grand. I'm writing a book called...
Yeah, but people don't read
Let him
books.
finish it.
Well, let me finish. I will. Thank you. I will once the book is finished. It will appear on the public domain anyway in chapters. But it's called The Legal Profession and I. It will start from my application to join the bar chambers in the profession until I was reprimanded by the Bar Standard Board last month because I was pursuing cases against Tony Blair, so that you know where I stand.